Hi folks, and welcome to yet another episode of Grumpy Opinions. This week we're looking at episode 7 in the final season of Outlander ever. And this one is going to be a doozy, so buckle up buckaroos. Episode 807, Evidence of Things Unseen, starts out with Jamie going hill walking up Mount Kingslayer, or whatever it's called, knowing that, the book says that this is where he's going to meet his end in about a month or two. And he's more convinced than ever, and so is Claire, because they talk about it. Yet again. Luckily, Wee Fanny has a bit of a meltdown because she's lost a wee lace keepsake of Jane's, and from that we end up finding out that they both had a grandma who lived in Paris who was a lace maker. And that's a clue. And it's yet another connection to Paris. And that's mighty convenient because round about the same time, they get a letter from Wee Ian, who's turned out got the report from that journalist who interviewed Jane just before she died last season. And in a big flashback, we find out that actually, Fanny and Jane were supposed to meet with Lady Brock Turek, i.e. Claire. And it basically spells out that Wee Fanny's mum really was Claire and Jamie's zombie baby. Claire and Jamie are so surprised that they explain this to Fanny, and understandably she's all like, what? And she points out the biggest flaw in the whole storyline.
How did she know the song, if she was only a baby?
But the next day, when she's feeling sad, they all have a chat at the cairn, and Fanny's like, cool. You must be my grandparents, I suppose. Meanwhile, at Casa del Grey, Billy confronts Pigsty, and after, she feigns a bit of annoyance, she finally cops to the fact that, she knows that Ben isn't dead, and it was her idea. And Bill ends up telling John, and he's like, well, fine, it's not good, but I guess we all lie to help look after our kids. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And that understandably annoys Bill, and what annoys him even more is that he ends up walking in on John later on while he's having a smooch with this guy who keeps popping up this season. And William gets in all kinds of gay panic and storms off like he's an annoyed bratty teenager. Meanwhile, Fungus is teaching his petty mignons to print propaganda, and he's just generally being the best and most dadliest dad ever, which isn't at all suspect.
Spot the stiff.
Spot the stiff.
Which characters are not going to make it to the end of the film?
And Parsley's hanging out with Brianna, and they're talking about seditious activities and such, and they're very shocked when some random guy tosses a tomato at Parsley. I mean, plainly he was trying to make a pasta sauce. But anyway, she cleans it up, and obviously the food makes Fungus horny, so the pair of them go at it, as you do. And they're so shagged out afterwards that they don't even wake up when the whole print shop catches fire. And of course, the wee mignons are hanging out on the roof, so Fungus has to go up and get them. And then he ends up lowering them down on a rope pulley, which goes very, very slowly because he has only one hand. And then wee baby Cabbage falls off, but Roger does a big goalie save, and it's all fine. And then they get the other one down, and it's all fine. And well done, Fungus.
Sainte Mère de Dieu, qu'est-ce qu'on entend?
So toasted mushrooms all round, and that's that. And the survivors all go back to Lord John's house and hang out, and of course, Parsley's pretty distraught about all this. And after a wee chat with Bree, they all head back to the ridge to ruin Jamie and Claire's day. And Jamie gets really sad while he's building a coffin. For someone. And then Fanny drags him off to a pile of stones because, she made a wee cairn for Fungus because Jamie did one for her sister Jane. And then she calls him Granda.
Granda.
And that's not quite the end, because there's a weird wee scene with Master Raymond giving little baby Faith to the lace maker and asking her to look after her and then pass her on to Claire when the time's right. And then he teaches her, I do love to be beside the seaside. Seriously.
I do like to be beside the seaside.
Thank God there's only 3 episodes left. End of episode. So what did I think? Well, I'll be fair to this episode. There were some good moments of drama and soap opera bits, and the actors got to do some good emoting, and even this pair, who aren't my favourite performers in the show, they did some decent sad facing, and Sam did some great bits of acting without speaking, and it all looked decent. Also, right, see these 2 kids? These 2 are really, really good. They've done excellent work every single episode they've been in, and I just want to put that out there. I think they're doing good stuff. If these kids want to act full time, I think they've got a good future. Also, the music was good. I don't really talk about the music that much these days, but I mean, the music has always been really good. So yeah, there's that. Unfortunately, that's kind of all I've got, because a lot happened this week that really annoyed me on a lot of different levels. And I should probably explain why. Okay, so let's start off with the least important bits. So, to begin with, the William storyline is yet again just boring. The show has absolutely no idea what to do with him, and no idea what to do with Lord John either. It's literally been a lot of the time the same conversations happening over and over again. William just floats about like a fart in a trance. Pigsty just goes about being either slutty or angry. And Lord John keeps just having the same conversation about this random guy who I can't remember who he is, who's some kind of fabled bad dude who may have turned up last season, but if he did, I don't remember who he is. They don't show him on the previously on. Also, Lord John's ex-boyfriend turns up, but apparently it seems that only happened so that they could have this moment where William suddenly gets a shock because he finds out that his adopted dad is actually gay. I mean, it's all pretty boring. William now is acting like a petted child. At this point, I have no idea what he has to do in the story. Maybe he's going to just go straight to the ridge and confront Jamie about something, or end up at Magic Mountain so that he can fight in the battle. But at this point, William is literally just retreading the same emotional journey that he had last season. And Pigsty, well, who cares? And Lord John, I have no idea what's supposed to be happening with him. Similarly, Roger and Brianna, I don't even know why they were here this week, other than they happened to be in that place. But the idea that they just suddenly saw a fire and came running and randomly turn up just so Roger can do his like audition for the Scotland rugby team, then it feels like they were marking time. Moving on to the Fanny and Faith storyline. Okay, so I've had big issues with this storyline since the beginning, mainly because I was wondering what they were going to do with it, but it seemed kind of stupid anyway. But it seems like they've gone from originally tying it up by just going at the beginning of the season, we will never know, to literally getting a whole bunch of coincidental revelations in the space of about 10 minutes of episode, all as a series of coincidences, like the lace, finding out about the French granny, the letter from Ian, the confession, the whole Lady Brock Turak thing, and oh my god, the fact that the show did what's called hanging lantern, which is, in writing terms, is what happens when something is so stupid or bad in an episode, you make a joke of it or you point it out deliberately so that the audience goes, well, clearly they know, so it's okay, I don't have to think about it. And they did that right here with Fanny saying,
how did she know the song? If she was only a baby.
And then they actually had that scene at the end of the episode. Monsieur Raymond turns up and tells the lace maker a song. And honestly, I laughed out loud at this because she's French and most of the scene is in French. But then he's like, oh, by the way, there's this song that her mother used to sing to her. And he starts singing the song in English. And it's only at that point it became apparent to me how complicated the song is. It's a really complicated song with weird words and odd lyrics. And I'll give the credit to the actress. At least she had kind of the good grace to look at him and being like, are you fucking serious? Honestly, I was half expecting her to just turn around at the end and go, perhaps Monsieur should write it down. And I think I would have forgiven it if something like that had happened. But it didn't. And also the fact that, again, Jamie and Claire's storyline has just been reduced to them floating around, her having occasional conversations with Fanny, who then says something that makes Claire go, oh, does she know something? And Jamie sitting pondering, am I going to die on a mountain? And then them having the same conversation they've had 3 or 4 times. This season has had so many repeats of the same conversation over and over again. It's honestly surprised me. But let's move on to the big thing in the episode. The death of Fergus Claudel Fraser, aka Fungus. Now, I've spoken before on videos on this channel about Spot the Stiff.
Spot the Stiff.
Now, I had an inkling something was off back at the start of the season where they had the scene where Fergus turns up and is telling Jamie about how he's a grown man and he can do his like secret sedition and his printing propaganda stuff because he learned everything that Jamie had taught him. And I went, okay, interesting. But this week it was just full on Spot the Stiff with like Fungus being just incredibly daddish and wise and kind and awesome and then having like sex with his wife and talking about all the kids they're going to have. And I was like, oh my god, he's dead for sure. And that's the issue. Something like this should have felt either unexpected or it should have felt important. Now, if you're a book reader, I imagine that this is done better. And you probably love Fergus because it's emotionally done in the book in ways that the show just doesn't have time for and isn't interested in. And in that case, I expect you would actually get more from this. And here it felt more like it was like, wait, what? That's it? And also the second he was on the roof, I mean, you know, it was the usual Outlander problems of, well, why doesn't he just drop the kids onto that flat roof in front of him with his good arm? Because suddenly in the next shot, it's on fire when it wasn't a second ago. Because of course it is. And similarly, you know, I get he's one-handed, so everything takes longer to do, so lowering them down is more difficult. But he could have gone faster than that. And also, once they're down, he's like, look at me admiring my heroicness. Oh, bollocks, I'm dead. I mean, I would have been jumping just straight off the roof. I mean, he's got one good hand, and he's got a metal hand. He could have just, like, clung the metal hand round the rope and maybe used that. And, you know, a rope burn is slightly less of a problem than death by fire. Also, there was silly little daft stuff like the fact that, okay, the boys are on the roof, but surely the boys can see and smell the fire, so why didn't they run back downstairs? Because it was clearly open, and they could have just gone back downstairs. They're not that young. Why are they cuddled up and hiding? I mean, I presume when this was written, it was supposed to look like they're trapped on the roof, but they weren't trapped on the roof at all. Now, again, it kind of saddens me because it could have, if done better, been actually really emotive, really powerful, really meaningful. But instead it just came across as kind of sloppy and messy. And more than that, it was kind of badly misjudged. I mean, it's similarly to like the scene with Sam, you know, him being sad with the coffin. And I was like, oh, this actually feels quite emotional. And then suddenly, boom, they just go into this terrible montage, which also didn't help. We got the terrible shot of Sam with a really bad fake beard and hair, which just will never not be funny. And it completely broke all the scene. And similarly, there was the moment where we found out about Fergus's death, and we get a very flat, bored-sounding Claire voiceover, instead of just actually staying with these people in this moment of grief.
Who seemed to drop out of the sky, and a son who was taken from us too soon. Such are the tapestries of our lives.
These choices don't surprise me because this is Outlander, and because of two factors. Factor 1 and Factor 2. Now, since Ron Moore left the show back in Season 3, Outlander has basically been in the hands of three different people. Matt Roberts, his wife Meryl Davis, and Tony Graffia. They're also the ones who mainly ran the podcast, the official podcast, up until it just inexplicably stopped halfway through Season 7 and has been dropping sporadic episodes really randomly ever since, and I think it just basically stopped 2 episodes for the end of Season 7. I guess they've given up on it. But from listening to basically the podcast on every episode and watching the show, it's pretty clear that Tony Graffia is a book fan, but she's also somebody who really likes things like telenovelas and soap operas, and she really seems to love melodrama, and from the way she writes. And so much of the dialogue this week felt really ridiculous and over the top, and very much kind of like...
I know writers who use subtext, and they're all cowards.
And very on the nose. And combine that with the director being Tracy Deer, the director who last season I mentioned because she did an episode that was really bloody awful, and there you've got an amazing combo of a melodramatic writer and a literal soapy sitcom director. And maybe that's what you want from the show. It might even be accurate to the books in some ways. But for me, it felt like this whole episode was kind of parachuted in from a much worse show, and it's just kind of disappointing. And it's interesting because online, everyone has just been complaining about the fact that Claire is almost non-existent in this show. And it's true. And she's almost non-existent in this episode, even though she's in it a lot, because Claire's just become a sounding board for Fanny at this point. It really doesn't make sense with her being the main character, because she has almost no presence in the story. Even the voiceovers from her are quite unusual and very oddly scattered around the show, so we're not feeling like this is her story anymore. It's a story of a bunch of people, but it's a story of a bunch of people being told in a really bad way. Honestly, this is the worst episode of the season in my regard. So where does that leave us? Well, in some ways I think I brought this upon myself because I enjoyed the last few episodes a bit too much. So the show was probably doomed to crash me down to some realistic expectations and reminders that the writing on this show is often fairly bad. And I will say, at least we've reached the point that there's 3 episodes left where almost all the other extraneous plots have been tied up. I mean, there clearly is some Lord John William pigsty stuff still to be sorted out, but other than that, nothing much. All the chickens have basically come home to roost. If Ian and Rachel turn back up at the Ridge next week, then literally everything outside of the Lord John and William storyline is all contained on the Ridge. And I jokingly said last week that everyone was going to end up on the Ridge, and turns out that seems like I might be right. So what's left now? I mean, there is the question of Jamie and what's going to happen to him on Magic Mountain. Whether he's going to die, whether he'll be resurrected, whether it's all just not true. And, presumably they're going to do something to explain the ghostly apparition thing from episode 1 of the whole show. But I don't see how that's going to fill out 3 whole episodes. Or at least it's not going to have enough for the cast to do stuff for the next 3 hours of Outlander. But at least it should mean that the show might, and I do mean that as a very much a might, focus on one plot in a way that helps pull it together into a decent finale. Fingers crossed. Although the other side of it is we could well reach some kind of cliffhanger at the end of next week and then spend most of the episode after that with Lord John and William. Or it might not. It might just be bouncing around between all these storylines, or somehow maybe all the storylines converge in one place. Oh god, what happens if it turns out that the guy that Lord John is after is actually going to be at that battle as well, and then Lord John turns up and then William follows him and everybody ends up in the same place at the same battle at the end. I don't think that's where this is going, but it could happen. Anyway, I fully expect that there will be a deluge of angry random people in the comments who have never commented before but who are just annoyed because I didn't like the episode. But if you do have serious thoughts, please, let me know what you think. Do you think I'm being unfair? Did this episode work for you? Did aspects of it work for you? Is it different from the book? Did this all tie up differently there in a way that made some sense? Yeah, let me know in the comments. And until next time, these have been my grumpy opinions.